Welcome. I'm Emily Jacobson, the paper and photograph conservator at the Freer Gallery of Art and Arthur M. Sackler Gallery, the Smithsonian's National Museum of Asian Art. I'm delighted to welcome you today to our lunchtime series, Sneak Peek, New Research from the Freer and Sackler. Each month, staff members will present in-depth personal perspectives and discuss ongoing research connected to works in the Freer and Sackler collections. It's an insider's view at original, unpublished, and developing ideas from our curators, conservators, and scientists. Today's program, the Ezzat-Malek Soudavar Shahnama, illustrating Firdawsi's Book of Kings in the early Qajar period, presented by Simon Rettig, Assistant Curator of Islamic Art, will explore his research on a 17th century volume of the Shahnama that had 47 paintings added to it in the 19th century. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker, Simon Rettig. And Simon Rettig is currently the Assistant Curator of Islamic Art at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Asian Art. He received his PhD from the University of Provence in France and previously worked at the French Research Institute of Anatolian Studies in Istanbul and the Freie Üniversität in Berlin. He joined the Freer and Sackler in 2012. Since then, he's curated and co-curated the exhibitions The Prince and the Shah, Royal Portraits from Qajar Iran in 2018, The Art of the Qur'an, Treasures from the Museum of Turkish and Islamic Arts in 2016-2017, and Nasta, The Genius of Persian Calligraphy in 2014 and 15. His current projects include an exhibition on the Great Mongol Shahnama, and a monograph on the Freer's celebrated manuscript of Nizami's Khusraw and Shirin. Simon?
Thank you, Emily, and thank you to the Sneak Peek team, Lisa Stein and Sana Mirza, and to Andy Finch on the technical backside for running this program so smoothly. So the Smithsonian's National Museum of Asian Art and the Harvard Art Museums together received a gift of 184 marvelous works of Persian lacquer in 2014. It was bequeathed by Fath Soudavar in memory of his late mother, Ezzat-Malek Soudavar. Ezzat-Malek Soudavar was a formidable and passionate collector of Persian art, and she amassed an extraordinary collection which mainly comprised works of calligraphy, manuscripts, and lacquerware, all of which testifying to her lifelong passion, the art of penmanship. The gift is composed mainly of pen boxes, but it also contains mirror cases, as well as a number of manuscripts with fine lacquered covers. Some date from the early 18th century, but the vast majority of them were made in the time of the Qajar dynasty, which ruled over Iran between 1785 and 1925. The Qajar 19th century can be seen as the golden age of Persian lacquer, if you will. Among the manuscripts of the Ezzat-Malek Soudavar collection is a copy of the Shahnama, Firdawsi's Book of Kings, Iran's national epic, a monument, if not the monument, of Persian literature with over 60,000 verses, completed by Firdawsi in the year 1010. The Shahnama narrates the history of Iran from the creation of the world to the Arab conquest of the land in the 7th century CE. So the Ezzat-Malek Soudavar copy has a lacquered binding, which shows traces of refurbishment. A large border of lacquer work, difficult to date, but we can loosely attribute it to the first half of the 19th century, frames a large central panel of dark brown leather. The original cover was certainly old lacquered, but during a restoration, the border, as you can see on the right, consisting in a series of stripes and bands decorated with stylized floral friezes and cartouches, or just plain, was affixed upon the leather. The inside cover plates are in plain light brown leather. So a fine lacquered cover indeed, which shows several stages of intervention, but the real interest of this work lies within the manuscript. Created in the Safavid period in the early 17th century, the copy was illustrated 200 years later, sometime in the first third of the 19th century, during the reign of Fath Ali Shah Qajar. So today I'm going to take you through my investigations of the multiple stages of the manuscript's life from the early 17th century to the time it entered the collection of Ezzat-Malek Soudavar sometime after 1950. I presented some preliminary findings in a paper I gave at a conference organized in conjunction with the major exhibition on Qajar art at the Louvre Museum in Lens in 2018. The conference proceedings, which include my essay on the Ezzat-Malek Soudavar Shahnama, will be published in fall 2021, so soon, under the title Revealing the Unseen, New Perspectives on Qajar Art. So now let's turn the pages of the manuscript. The Ezzat-Malek Soudavar Shahnama comprises 584 folios. The text is copied in Nasta, a script favored for works in Persian since the late 14th century. The handwriting is homogeneous throughout the volume, an indication that only one copyist worked on the manuscript's production. The colophon, here inscribed in the triangle on the recto of the left page, provides the date of Friday, the 11th of the month of Safar of the year 1021 Hijri, which corresponds to the 12th of April, 1612 CE. It lacks a reference to the manuscript's place of completion, but the copyist gives his name, Vali ibn Ali Takalu, a calligrapher who also copied a Khamsa of Nizami, dated 1617-18, and illustrated with 12 paintings, one inscribed with a spurious attribution to the celebrated Safavid painter Reza Yabasi. No other work by this copyist is known, but we can surmise that Vali ibn Ali Takalu was active in the first decade of the 17th century and most likely in circles close to Shah Abbas I and the court at Isfahan. The original folio has been remounted, the first original folio has been remounted onto a new blank page, and the manuscript starts directly with the text of the Besancourt preface, inserted in a double-page frontispiece on folios 1B2A. The style of the illuminations, with a controlled balance between gold and ultramarine blue, as well as the large borders with refined medallions, undeniably points to a Safavid production, most certainly contemporaneous with the transcription of the text. The original patron is not identified precisely, but a small inscription within 3 gilded cartouches that you can see on the screens here, 1, 2, 3, displayed so in the medial column separating hemistiches, reads, "This has been written for Hussein Sultan," followed by an illegible word starting with the letter Kha here. Illegible or because erased. One might think of the Safavid Shah Sultan Hussein, who reigned between 1694 and 1722, but the inversion in the first name, as well as the location of the inscription, invalidates such a royal attribution, a fact also supported by the styles of the illuminations, which is clearly contemporaneous with Shah Abbas I's times productions. So the Ezzat-Malek Soudavar Shahnama contains at present 47 paintings, which can be attributed to the Qajar period on a stylistic basis. An interesting and notable feature is the consistent format of the paintings throughout the volume. First, they always occupied a rectangular space, which is strictly confined within the zone of text and do not encroach into the margins. Second, each of the paintings is framed with 2 to 3 lines of text above and 2 lines below. These illustrations were added into the space originally allotted to them when the manuscript was created in the early 17th century, which for unknown reasons remained blank until the early 19th century. The illustrative program was therefore determined when the copy was completed in the Safavid period. And as a result, the illustrative program also suggests the preoccupations of the anonymous Safavid patron during Shah Abbas I's reign. When the manuscript was completed in 1612, the war against the Ottomans and Sultan Ahmad I, which started in 1603, had just ended. The Safavid victory allowed the recapture of some parts of Western Iran, which had been lost since 1595. Interestingly, the choice of 5 illustrations, as shown here, may, in some cases, signify contemporary events, as emphasis is given to episodes involving the land of Rum, Anatolia, then corresponding to the realm of the Ottoman Turks. Perhaps more importantly, the illustrative program also prominently showcases the figure of Rustam. 11 paintings, about a quarter of the total, depict episodes with the legendary Iranian hero. Described as a tall man gifted with Herculean force, Rustam is visually distinguished in this manuscript from the other characters not by his physical features, but by his distinctive clothing, as he wears a tiger skin jacket and the white deer's head as a helmet. But something else transpires here. If the cycle was determined in the 17th century, the iconography of the images verily speak to a Qajar audience. In fact, in the manuscript, Rustam appears in the guise of Fath Ali Shah Qajar, clearly recognizable by his long, thick, pointed black beard. Usually, the paladin is presented with a shorter, two-pointed brown or red beard. So the message these illustrations convey is clear. Through the figure of Rustam, the archetype of the defender of the land of Iran against its enemies, Fath Ali Shah, who ruled from 1797 to 1834, embodies bravery, courage, and strength, and he personifies Iranian heroism. This association of the ruling Qajar king and the mythical hero highlights the power of the new dynasty and enshrines Fath Ali Shah in the millenary tradition of Iranian monarchy. Furthermore, it is he who is portrayed here as the supreme protector of Iranian sovereignty. Rustam is also often depicted wearing military uniform as a sign of his aristocratic origins. The painting of Tahmina entering Rustam's bedroom shows a relaxed Rustam on a throne-like bed, dressed in simple cast iron armor. He is still wearing his military helmet, yet adorned here with the imperial plumed aigrettes only worn by the Qajar Shah. Here again, the royal figure and the mythical hero coalesce. One painting introduces Fath Ali Shah in the guise of a figure other than Bustam, and that is the Sasanian king Khusraw I, known as Khusraw Anushirvan. The mighty king is seated on a throne, 2 servants stand behind him, and 2 princes are in attendance at the rear on the right. 2 viziers wearing turbans in the lower left stand in the foreground, mirroring the 2 envoys of the Emperor of Rome on the right. The historical Sasanian king, who ruled between 531 and 579 CE, is introduced by Firdawsi in the Shahnama as the monarch who brought justice to his kingdom and made his people rich and prosperous. Consequently, there seems no better association for the Qajar Shah than with the ancient just king who brought stability and success to Iran. The personification of Anushirvan as Fath Ali Shah is visually rendered through his characteristic long beard, as well as through the bejeweled regalia, like the crown. The throne also reinforces the identity of the sitter. The curved left front foot here of the throne confirms that it is a depiction of the sun throne, Taht el-Khorshid, commissioned by Fath Ali Shah in 1800. Of the Of the 4 throne scenes illustrated in the Ezzat-Malek Soudavar Shahnama, only the painting with Anushirvan presents this iconographic element specific to Fath Ali Shah, thereby indisputably confirming the identity of the Qajar ruler. On another level, this illustration with Anushirvan points to the issue of models and compositions. As you can see on the screen, the artist who made the painting clearly used an earlier model of Fath Ali Shah enthroned. And it's this painting. This painting under lacquer is in the inside cover of a copy of the Divan-i-Raqan, a collection of poetry by Fath Ali Shah himself. It is clearly a royal work made by an artist working for the court. The close similarity between the 2 paintings testify to the dynamic diffusion and circulations of models between artists, workshops, and centers in the early Qajar period. Like their late Safavid and Zen predecessors, Qajar artists were also artistically versatile, working in a wide range of media, from wall painting to manuscript and lacquer. Lacquerware and book painting in particular exemplify the artist's adaptability across different media, which continued through the Qajar period. The landscape on the cover of an undated pen case, probably from the last third of the 18th century, shows a similar treatment of the trees' architectural elements than in the painting in the Ezzat-Malek Soudavar Shahnama. It also demonstrates the same sense of spatial arrangement for backgrounds as seen in the outdoor scenes. The pen case bears the invocation Ya Sadiq al-Wa'ad, O you who are true to your promise, which was used as a cryptic signature by the artist Muhammad Sadiq. Sadiq played a critical role in the artistic continuity between the Zens and the Qajars. Active in Isfahan in the second half of the 18th century, Sadiq is known to have worked in various media and to have executed paintings for successive rulers from the Safavid to the Qajar period. Although the year of his death is unknown, it is usually thought that he passed away not long after Fath Ali Shah was enthroned. Beyond the treatment of landscape, the strong stylistic correspondence between the depiction of figures and horses in the Shahnama paintings and in work signed by or attributed to Muhammad Sadiq further point to the hand of this artist, this artist or artists. I may just note here that it has been surmised that there were several successive Muhammad Sadiq, 2 at least. So here we may deal with Muhammad Sadiq the second one. So it may point to his hand or to the hand of his followers. The style of Muhammad Sadiq had indeed a lasting influence on the artistic production of the first quarter of the 19th century through his disciples, one of whom was Najaf Ali, a prolific lacquer master. The identity of the Qajar patron who commissioned the illustrations in the early 19th century remains, unfortunately, at this stage unknown. Some additional elements, however, offer some indication of the manuscript's afterlife. By identifying the 47 paintings in the manuscripts, I noted that one diverged stylistically from the others. Although the overall composition follows other battle scenes in the manuscript, the execution in this one is more nervous. The use of vivid, almost garish colors, such as blue and orange, and the silvery shining armors, contrast with the homogeneous gentle tones and softer hues of other earlier paintings. The riders and their horses are quite different in style and execution from others in the manuscript, suggested that they must be indeed by a different and later hand. The central figure of Gav, who has fatally wounded Talhand mounted on his elephant, stands out in particular as he gazes directly at the viewer. His physical features also distinguish him from the other fighters. The short black beard signals that the figure might represent Muhammad Shah Qajar, who ascended the throne in 1834. As such, the illustration suggests the continuation of a tradition that had already been embraced by Fath Ali Shah to present Qajar rulers as Shahnama heroes to affirm their legitimacy and celebrate their power and grandeur. Among the later interventions, other interventions to the manuscripts, are two rectangular seals impressions, which are visible on the verso of the last folio. One is now only partially legible. This is this one, and here you can read the name of Aziz, which we know several Qajar princes with the name of Aziz, but it's without reading the rest, it's hard to identify precisely an individual. But the second seal, presented here in the middle, gives the name of a certain Muhammad Bakr, and is dated 1259, corresponding to the year 1844. So based on stylistic consideration, it's interesting to note that the painting of Gav and Thailand with the portrait of Muhammad Shah Qajar was most likely added at this time. Another seal impression that you see on the right, oval in shape, bears the name of Nasir al-Mulk. The date in the lower part is partially erased, but the first two digits, 1 and 3, are legible, indicating that it was applied after 1300 or 1884. It might be the seal of Abul Qasim Nasir al-Mulk, who was Ahmad Shah Qajar's regent between 1911 and 1914. The first Iranian educated at Oxford, Nasir al-Mulk was a great bibliophile, and he collected not only historical manuscripts, but he also ordered new copies of Persian classics as manuscripts. The Ezzat-Malek Soudavar Shahnama may have been refurbished at this time in the late 19th century. Damaged pages were mended, 3 blank leaves were added at the front, and as well as the binding, as we saw at the beginning, was refurbished. Foliation also in Persian numerals in black ink was added in the upper left corners on the rectors. In an unusual manner here in these manuscripts, the copyist, the original copyist, Vali ibn Ali Takalu, inscribed in 2 cartouches displayed under the triangular colophon that the manuscript contained 581 folios when he completed the copy in 1612. So the manuscript has now, as you see, like 584 folios, which means there is a discrepancy between what the copy says and what the Persian foliations, which is an indication that the foliation was added at during the latest refurbishment, because that includes the 3 first folios. So in the late 19th, early 20th century. Finally, page markers that you see here, in the form of stylized vegetal and floral motifs made of pinkish paper, indicate the placement of the paintings throughout the manuscript. Located in the middle of the foredge, those devices are set on the page itself when the painting is on the verso of a folio. But as shown here, when the illustration appears on the recto, the page marker is then affixed on the previous page. So the Shahnama was eventually acquired by Ezzat-Malek Soudavar around 1960. But before it entered her collection, the copy underwent a final series of alterations as 2 folios were removed from the manuscript. Folio 395 with the painting of Iskandar and the talking tree, and folio 429 with Bahram Gur fights 2 lions to win the throne of Iran. These two illustrations were located on the rectors as page markers, that you can see, indicating their placement are still visible on the previous folio. So the present whereabouts of these two illustrations are unknown. So in many ways, the Ezzat-Malek Soudavar Shahnama epitomizes the production of illustrated manuscripts in the early Qajar period. Not only is the identity of the patron often unknown, but for the most part, the artist also remain anonymous. Furthermore, it's still difficult to attribute such works to specific centers of production and to provide accurate dating for the painting. So the study and publication of works such as these wonderful manuscripts will hopefully shed light on the range, vitality, richness, and complexity of manuscript paintings in early 19th century Iran, and also on the many lives of the Persian manuscripts. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Simon, for that wonderful presentation with such beautiful images to go with it. I love that. So we're going to start taking questions from the audience. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the question and answer box. So we have one question already, and that is about the double page opening illumination that you talked about, Simon. And it looks, the question is that it looks like it is cut down quite a bit. Do you have any ideas?
Let me go back to
sure, of why or when that may have
yes,
happened.
I have. It's that's let me here. So it's basically, as you can see here, it's cut here, the illuminations and the borders, and you can see here how the pages were mended, and remounted onto new paper. That is a sign that the manuscript was refurbished, because when you take a manuscript from its own old bindings to insert it into a new binding, you need basically to trim the pages. So basically, that trimmed all the folios here to insert it into to mount it in the new binding. So that's a sign. That's a sign of refurbishment. That's often, you see often that in manuscripts. You can see it also. Another sign is the catchword. So that's the word before there was paginations. When a copyist was copying a manuscript, it would do it on quires. So you would have bifolios mounted in quires, usually of 4 or 5 bifolios. And then in order to know which page goes after which page, you use the catchword system, which is you write here the first word of the next folio, so that you don't get confused and you don't mount the manuscripts in the wrong sequence. And often they are in the margins down. So when you basically mount the manuscripts into a new binding, and you trim the folios, often the catchword is cut also, which is another sign. Here, as it was a pretty large manuscript, you still see the catchwords, but the illuminations at the beginning, which usually covers the whole page, yes, they get trimmed.
So Simon, we have another question. This one actually is from Abulala Soudavar. And he is asking whether there are any signs of the pointillism technique in the paintings, especially in the grass.
That I don't know. I haven't looked at that.
That's actually good. That gives us something to look for.
Yes.
because
there are still so many things to look for in those paintings and manuscripts.
Okay, now we have another question asking whether the pictorial program includes a double-page illustration of Lurasp enthroned, in the middle.
No.
No, does
No,
not.
there is no Lurasp enthroned, and if I remember well, usually the reign of Lurasp usually marks the half of the Shahnama, and often that's the only chapter with which is also illuminated. It has a illuminated heading, but not in that manuscript, interestingly. So the manuscript has only like 2 illuminations, which is the double page as I shown, starting the preface, and then the text of the Shahnama itself a few pages later as a illuminated heading, but then that's it for the illuminations.
So someone else wants to know whether the book is unique or was it copied multiple times for multiple people?
You mean the Shahnama?
I think that's what they might be asking.
Yeah, so there is no 2 identical copies of the Shahnama in terms of illustrations or in terms of text. You can imagine with a text that has like more than 60,000 verses, it's hard to find the same version. So usually, some verses are included in a copy and they're not in another. So there's no 2 single identical copies of the Shahnama. Then the story and the sequence, is the same in all of them, but then there are like variation in the text.
So we have another question that is, what stylistic connections do you see between the manuscript illustrations and the earlier fresco depictions?
And the earlier?
Fresco depictions?
Well, yeah, there are a lot of connections, and especially if you do the connection with Muhammad Sadiq, who painted murals also. So that's exactly the style, of figures of landscape that you will find on murals as well. If you look at still examples in Isfahan, there is clearly like the connections from between architectural paintings or panels and those paintings, and also in time. Like basically here you have painting in a style that you can see from the 70s, so the late Zand period, go throughout the reign of Fath Ali Shah Qajar. But and that's very interesting to compare with this one, because that's clearly, here it's not signed, the painting on the binding, but it's clearly the work of a master. So if it's Mirza Baba or Mir Ali, clearly like a royal painter. You see sort of like the transcription in the Ezzat-Malek Soudavar Shahnama, which is less, I would say, less refined in style. So the artist, knew about this composition clearly, but then its transcription, the painting is less. Says like artistically achieved, I think. Also, this painting differs, from the other in style. Which is because I think there were actually several painters working on this manuscript. You can sort of note several hands. These ones are way much more refined. than the painting with Anushirvan. See, in terms of like, especially the treatment of the faces are very much different. So I think like several artists worked on this one.
So another question is, do the illustrations relate directly to the break line verses? And maybe you can explain to what that means, the break line verses.
So the break line is the line preceding the painting, or the line placed after the painting, and that's something that you see in the Safavid period. Either you the break lines give the theme of the painting that follows, or it's actually the title, in the rubric here in red, that is often placed right above the painting, and the title functions as the rubric functions as the title for the chapter and the title for the painting. So you see here, it's clearly it says that the ambassador of the Kaiser of Rome, as we are received by Anushirvan. Well, and often the title is not, you don't see it here, but it's on the page next to it. So that's how these illustration functions, and they're pretty basic in their iconography. You identify the scene, and then the painter would paint it, would paint it like in a traditional manner. If it's like here, you don't even have to read the text to recognize that it's like Bustam rescuing Bijan from the pit. It's from the well. So it's really it's very interesting.
So Simon, I know you obviously have a lot to say about all of this. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I apologize to those of you whose questions we didn't get to, but I really want to thank everyone for joining us today. You can find more information on this and other events on our website, and additional questions and comments can be directed to our scholarly programs and publication department by emailing asiascholarlyprogram@si.edu. And I want to thank everyone for coming, and have a great day.